Hello and welcome to SuperLead Insights. On this series, myself and Sihle will be sharing strategic and leadership insights that we believe will be super helpful as we navigate through these unprecedented times. And for today, I would like us to thoughtfully consider this question that many people have asked and which you may have asked or maybe are going to ask. And the question really is, should we just write off this year? Should we write off the year 2020? And defer the dreams and plans and initiatives to possibly 2021 or 2022. And it is very tempting to give a quick, flippant answer, either yes or no to this question. But I would like us to hold the question and hold this thought and consider it with a different perspective. One which is anchored in realism and hope. You see, the seemingly unending nature of this crisis can leave many of us anxious, somewhat paralyzed, and sitting and waiting to wish away the pandemic. Because most of us can endure if we know when the end will come. I'm a long distance runner and cyclist myself, and I know, hard as it may be, it is relatively bearable, and you can endure if you know how many more kilometers you still have to go. But for this COVID crisis, there are no known timelines for when the pandemic will come to an end. And for us to thrive as families and organizations, we will need to forge a positive path forward and make the best of the way things have turned out, even though we don't know when the end will come. That's what I would like to talk about today. And I want to start by reflecting on the principle called the Stockdale Paradox. This was introduced by Jim Collins in his remarkable book, Good to Great. Jim shares in the book a story of James Stockdale, who was a former naval officer. He served as a high-ranking officer during the Vietnam War. He was held as a prisoner of war in the 1960s and spent 8 years in a war camp while in captivity. He was repeatedly tortured. He suffered constantly. He had very little reason to believe that he will make it out alive. And the situation was made even more bleak by the unending nature of the torture. Because most of us, as I said, we can endure as long as we know when the end will come. So years later, Jim Collins interviews him and asked him how he survived the war camp. And his answer was very simply, he never wavered in his faith that he will get out, but he will also turn this ordeal into a defining moment of his life that in retrospect he will not trade. He will turn that experience of being in the war camp into a defining moment of his life that in retrospect he will not trade. And that's the first idea I would like us to put in play. And I would like us to put this idea in play in a form of a question. The question really is, how can we turn this COVID experience into a defining moment of our lives, of our careers, of our organization, that in retrospect, we will not trade? And or maybe on a personal note, this could be the time that you reflect on your purpose and your values and your vision and really lead a life that's aligned right from the core. And ask those tough questions, whether you're a purpose-driven leader, whether you're the kind of leader that your team enjoys following, who still manages to get results, whether you've managed to create, over the years, an enabling environment for your team to do their best work. Could this be the time that you learn a new skill and bolster your resilience and your emotional intelligence as a leader? Maybe you could enlist a leadership coach to help you where you may be stuck in certain areas of your leadership. And for organizations, this could be the time to really critically review and re-look at your strategy and reorient perhaps, and re-look at your operating model to see and ask those tough questions if you are structured well enough to win in the future. And digital transformation and the future of work have been key discussion topics in conferences and leadership magazines and articles. And for most organizations haven't made much progress in that regard. And this might be the time to really take that bold step and embark on a journey of digital transformation for your organization, on a journey to re-engineer your processes and be lean and be agile and be super customer-centric. You know, CEOs the world over admit that they do not have the leadership capacity and the bench strength that they require to execute their strategies and win in the future. And in our view, this is the time to build and develop your leadership bench strength and capability. Because as John C. Maxwell will say, everything rises and falls on leadership. So whatever the case might be, we can turn this ordeal, we can turn this experience into a defining moment of our lives, of our teams, of our organization, that in retrospect, we will not trade. So in this conversation with James Stockdale, Jim asked him a follow-up question to say, you know, who didn't make it out of the war camp? And, James gave a very quick answer. He said, the optimist didn't make it. And the irony is not lost there. Because the optimist always thought that they will be out of here in 2 weeks' time, in a month's time. They will be out of there by Christmas. They will be out of there by Easter. And ultimately, they suffered from a broken heart and they never made it out of the war camp. With that, in true Jim Collins style, he coined a duality principle he refers to as the Stockdale Paradox. And really the principle is simply successful leaders have this unwavering faith that in the end, whenever that is, they will prevail. However, they also have this discipline to confront the brutal facts as they are today. And I think it's worth repeating to say successful leaders have this unwavering faith that in the end, they will prevail. But they also have this discipline to confront the brutal facts as they are. You know, as this requires that we do a sober assessment of the current situation in your business, at home, in your career, and really think about, the future consequences thereof. And realizing that the gap between the present circumstances and the desired outcomes can sometimes be psychologically overwhelming and immobilizing. And as such, have that unwavering faith that in the end we will prevail. And critically important is to inspire your team with the same hope that in the very end, we will prevail, regardless of how the facts look like today. So this grounded and hopeful faith has perhaps never been more relevant than it is today. Because in these times, we are likely to see organizations running out of critical resources and runway as a result of being too optimistic in their planning. And this unwillingness to acknowledge the possible deep downturn and the extended time frame of this crisis might impair the ability of many organizations to adapt rapidly to these changing conditions. You see, confronting the brutal facts requires leaders to turn over the rocks and look at those squeaky, ugly things and make the tough changes. And as a leader, you may benefit from an outsider's view to embark on this strategic cost transformation. And we can help. So as I draw to a conclusion, I would like to urge all of us with this faith, to have this unwavering faith that in the end, we will prevail over this crisis. I would like to encourage all of us to continue to face and act on the brutal facts as we see them today, to accept the reality, to commit to being resilient, to developing a plan for you, your family, and your organizations to thrive. And with that, we would like to hear from you and would like to engage. Should you require a leadership coach, maybe to navigate these times with, or our support with any of your strategic, operational, or leadership initiatives, you can contact us and you can find our contact details at www.superleadadvisory.co.za. I look forward to engaging with you and sharing further insights in the weeks and months to come. Until then, go out there and super lead.